Hello, welcome to Dracula in Russian Lesson 19. If you have not listened to Lesson 18, please click on it now. If you are new to the channel, please click on Lesson 1.
In the next paragraph, we are introducing a new word. The word back translates to nazat. This is a reminder. Remember down translates to vniz. Один раз снова, we went through that ghastly operation. I have not the heart to go through with the details. Lucy had got a terrible shock, and it told on her more than before. For though plenty of blood went into her veins, her body did not respond to the treatment as well as on the other occasions. Her struggle nazad into life was something frightful to see and hear. However, the action of both heart and lungs improved, and Van Helsing's deal a subcutaneous injection of morphia, as before, and with хороший effect. Her faint became a profound slumber. The professor watched whilst I went downstairs with Quincy Morris and sent one of the maids to pay off one of the cabmen who were waiting. I left Quincy lying vniz, mostly having a glass of wine, and told the cook to get ready a хороший breakfast. Then a thought struck me, and I went nazat to the komnata где Lucy now was. When I came softly in, I found Van Helsing with a sheet or two of notepaper in his hand. He had evidently read it and was thinking it over as he sat with his hand to his brow. There was a смотреть of grim satisfaction in his лицо, as of one who has had a doubt solved. He handed me the paper, saying only, "It dropped from Lucy's breast when we carried her to the bath." When I had read it, I stood looking at the professor, and postly a pause asked him, "In God's name, what does it all mean? Was she, or is she, mad, or what sort of horrible danger is it?" I was so bewildered that I did not know what to say more. Van Helsing put out his hand and взял the paper, saying, "This is a reminder. Remember about translates to O. This is a reminder. Remember back translates to nazad. This is a reminder. Remember again translates to snova. Do not trouble O it now. Forget it for the present. You shall know and understand it all in хороший time, but it will be later. And now what is it that you came to me to say?" This brought me nazad to fact, and I was all myself snova. This is a reminder. Remember about translates to O. I came to speak o the certificate of death. If we do not act properly and wisely, there may be an inquest, and that paper would have to be produced. I am in hopes that we need have no inquest, for if we had it would surely kill bidny Lucy, if nothing else did. I know, and you know, and the other doctor who attended her knows, that Mrs. Westenra had disease of the heart, and we can certify that she died of it. Let us fill up the certificate at Adin Raz, and I shall take it myself to the registrar and go on to the undertaker. This is a reminder. Remember there translates to ich. This is a reminder. Remember man translates to mushima. Good, oh my drug John, well thought of. Truly Miss Lucy, if she be sad in the foes that beset her, is at least happy in the friends that love her. 1, 2, 3, all openich veins for her, besides one stari mushima. Ah, yes, I know, drug John. I am not blind. I love you all the more for it. Now go. In the hall I met Quincy Morris, with a telegram for Arthur telling him that Mrs. Westenra was dead, that Lucy also had been ill, but was now going on better, and that Van Helsing and I were with her. I told him I was going, and he hurried me out, but as I was going said, "This is a reminder. Remember back translates to nazad. This is a reminder. Remember about translates to O. When you come nazad, Jack, may I have 2 words with you all to ourselves?" I nodded in reply and went out. I found no difficulty the registration and arranged with the local undertaker to come up in the evening to measure for the coffin and to deal its arrangements. This is a reminder. Remember back translates to nazat. This is a reminder. Remember down translates to vniz. When I got nazad, Quincy was waiting for me. I told him I would see him as soon as I knew a Lucy, and went up to her komnata. She was still sleeping, and the professor seemingly had not moved from his seat at her side. From his putting his finger to his lips, I gathered that he expected her to wake before long and was afraid of forestalling nature. So I went vniz to Quincy, and взял him into the breakfast room, где the blinds were not drawn vniz, and which was a malinki more cheerful, or rather less cheerless, than the other rooms. When we were alone, he said to me, "This is a reminder. Remember man translates to mushima. Jack Seward, I don't want to shove myself in any dia where I've no right to be, but this is no ordinary case. You know I loved that girl and wanted to marry her, But, although that's all past and gone, I can't help feeling anxious o' her all the same. What is it that's wrong with her? The Dutchman, and a fine starry fellow he is, I can see that, said that time you two came into the komnata, that you must have another transfusion of blood, and that both you and he were exhausted. Now I know well that you medical men speak in camera, and that a Mushima must not expect to know what they consult in private. But this is no common matter, and whatever it is, I have done my part. Is not that so? That's so, I said, and he went on. I take it that both you and Van Helsing had done already what I did today. Is not that so? That's so. This is a reminder. Remember down translates to Vniz. This is a reminder. Remember saw translates to videl. And I guess art was in it too. When I videl him 4 days ago Vniz at his own place, he looked queer. I have not seen anything pulled Vniz so quick since I was on the Pampas and had a mare that I was fond of go to grass all in a noche. One of those big bats that they call vampires had got at her in the noche, and what with his gorge and the vein left open, there wasn't enough blood in her to let her stand up, and I had to put a bullet through her as she lay. Jack, if you may tell me without betraying confidence, Arthur was the first. Is not that so? As he spoke, the Bidney fellow looked terribly anxious. He was in a torture of suspense regarding the woman he loved, and his utter ignorance of the terrible mystery which seemed to surround her intensified his pain. His very heart was bleeding, and it vzal all the manhood of him, and there was a royal lot of it, too, to keep him from breaking Vnice. I paused before answering, for I felt that I must not betray anything which the professor wished kept secret, but already he knew so much and guessed so much that there could be no reason for not answering, so I answered in the same phrase, That's so. And cock long has this been going on? About 10 days. This is a reminder. Remember man translates to Mushima. 10 days. Then I guess Jack Seward, that Bidney pretty creature that we all love has had put into her veins within that time the blood of 4 strong men. Mushima alive, her whole body wouldn't hold it. Then, coming close to me, he spoke in a fierce half-whisper. What vzal it out? This is a reminder. Remember here translates to zdis. This is a reminder. Remember again translates to snova. I shook my head. That, I said, is the crux. Van Helsing is simply frantic it, and I am at my wit's end. I can't even hazard a guess. There has been a series of Malinki circumstances which have thrown out all our calculations as to Lucy being properly watched. But these shall not occur snova. Zdis we stay until all be well, or ill. Quincy held out his hand. Count me in, he said. You and the Dutchman will tell me what to do, and I'll do it. This is a reminder. Remember here translates to zdis. When she woke late in the afternoon, Lucy's first movement was to feel in her breast, and to my surprise, produce the paper which Van Helsing had given me to read. The careful professor had replaced it где it had come from, lest on waking she dolgen be alarmed. Her eye then lit on Van Helsing and on me too, and gladdened. Then she looked around the komnata, and seeing где she was, shuddered. She gave a loud cry, and put her bidny thin hands before her pale litso. We both understood what that meant, that she had realized to the full her mother's death, so we tried what we could to comfort her. Doubtless sympathy eased her somewhat, but she was very low in thought and spirit, and wept silently and weakly for a long time. We told her that either or both of us would now remain with her all the time, and that seemed to comfort her. Towards dusk she fell into a doze. Zdесь a very odd thing occurred. Whilst still asleep, she vzal the paper from her breast and tore it in two. Van Helsing stepped over and vzal the pieces from her. All the same, however, she went on with the action of tearing, as though the material were still in her hands. Finally, she lifted her hands and opened them, as though scattering the fragments. Van Helsing seemed surprised, and his brows gathered as if in thought, but he said nothing. 19th September. All last noche she slept fitfully, being always afraid to sput, and something weaker when she woke from it. The professor and I vzal it in turns to watch, and we never left her for a moment unattended. Quincy Morris said nothing o his intention, but I knew that all noche long he patrolled round and round the house. This is a reminder. Remember back translates to Nazad. When the Dane came, its searching light showed the ravages in Bidney Lucy's strength. She was hardly able to turn her head, and the malinki nourishment which she could take seemed to do her no haroshi. At times she slept, and both Van Helsing and I noticed the difference in her, between sleeping and waking. Whilst asleep she looked stronger, although more haggard, and her breathing was softer. Her open mouth showed the pale gums drawn nazat from the teeth, which thus looked positively longer and sharper than usual. When she woke, the softness of her glaza evidently changed the expression, for she looked her own self, although a dying one. In the afternoon she asked for Arthur, and we telegraphed for him. Quincy went off to meet him at the station. This is a reminder. Remember, saw translates to videl. When he arrived, it was nearly 6 o'clock, and the sun was setting full and warm, and the red light streamed in through the window and gave more color to the pale cheeks. When he videl her, Arthur was simply choking with emotion, and none of us could speak. In the hours that had passed, the fits of spite, or the comatose condition that passed for it, had grown more frequent, so that the pauses when conversation was possible were shortened. Arthur's presence, however, seemed to act as a stimulant. She rallied a malinki, and spoke to him more brightly than she had done since we arrived. He too pulled himself together, and spoke as cheerily as he could, so that the best was still of everything. It was now nearly 1 o'clock, and he and Van Helsing are sitting with her. I am to relieve them in a quarter of an hour, and I am entering this on Lucy's phonograph. Until 6 o'clock they are to try to rest. I fear that tomorrow will end our watching, for the shock has been too veliki. The bidni child cannot rally. God help us all. Letter, Mina Harker to Lucy Westenra. Unopened. 17 September. My dearest Lucy, this is a reminder. Remember back translates to Nazad. It seems an age since I heard from you, or indeed since I wrote. You will pardon me, I know, for all my faults when you have read all my budget of news. Well, I got my husband Nazad all right. When we arrived at Exeter, there was a carriage waiting for us, and in it, though he had an attack of gout, Mr. Hawkins, he vzal us to his house, where there were rooms for us all nice and comfortable, and we dined together. Postly dinner, Mr. Hawkins said, "This is a reminder." Remember here translates to zdis. This is a reminder. Remember, man translates to mushima. My dears, I want to drink your health and prosperity, and may every blessing attend you both. I know you both from children, and have, with love and pride, seen you grow up. Now I want you to deal at your homes dis with me. I have left to me neither chick nor child, all are gone, and in my will I have left you everything. I cried, Lucy dear, as Jonathan and the Stari Mushima clasped hands. Our evening was a very, very happy one. This is a reminder. Remember here translates to zdes. This is a reminder. Remember there translates to ich. So zdes we are, installed in this beautiful Stari house, and from both my bedroom and the drawing room I can see the veliki elms of the cathedral close, with ich veliki black stems standing out against the Stari yellow stone of the cathedral, and I can hear the rooks overhead cawing and chattering and gossiping all daying, postly the manner of rooks and humans. I am busy, I need not tell you, arranging things and housekeeping. Jonathan and Mr. Hawkins are busy all day, for now that Jonathan is a partner, Mr. Hawkins wants to tell him all the clients. This is a reminder. Remember again translates to snova. This is a reminder. Remember back translates to nazad. How is your dear mother getting on? I wish I could run up to town for a day or two to see you, dear, but I dare not go yet, with so much on my shoulders. And Jonathan wants looking postly still. He is beginning to put some flesh on his bones, snova, but he was terribly weakened by the long illness. Even now he sometimes starts out of his sput in a sudden sposob and awakes all trembling, until I can coax him nazat to his usual placidity. However, thank God, these occasions grow less frequent as the days go on, and they will in time pass away altogether, I trust. And now I have told you my news. Let me ask yours. When are you to be married, and gde? And who is to perform the ceremony? And what are you to wear? And is it to be a public or a private wedding? Tell me all o it, dear. Tell me all o everything, for there is nothing which interests you which will not be dear to me. Jonathan asks me to send his respectful duty, but I do not doom it that is haroshi enough from the junior partner of the important firm Hawkins and Harker. And so as you love me, and he loves me, and I love you with all the moods and tenses of the verb, I send you simply his love instead. Goodbye, my dearest Lucy, and all blessings on you. Yours, Mina Harker. Report from Patrick Hennessy, MD, MRCS, LQCPI, etc., to John Seward, MD. 20 September. My dear sir, this is a reminder. Remember there translates to Ich. This is a reminder. Remember man translates to Mushima. This is a reminder. Remember down translates to Vniz. This is a reminder. Remember again translates to Snova. In the next paragraph, we are introducing a new word. The word before translates to Do. This is a reminder. Remember back translates to Nazat. In accordance with your wishes, I enclose report of the conditions of everything left in my charge. With regard to patient Renfield, there is more to say. He has had another outbreak which might have had a dreadful ending, but which, as it fortunately happened, was unattended with any unhappy results. This afternoon, a carrier's cart with 2 men's dill a call at the empty house whose grounds abut on ours, the house to which, you will remember, the patient twice ran away. The men stopped at our gate to ask the porter Ich Sposob, as they were strangers. I was myself looking out of the study window, having a smoke postly dinner, and videl one of them come up to the house. As he passed the window of Renfield's komnata, the patient began to rate him from within, and called him all the foul names he could lay his tongue to. The Mushima, who seemed a decent fellow enough, contented himself by telling him to shut up for a foul-mouthed beggar, whereon our Mushima accused him of robbing him and wanting to murder him, and said that he would hinder him if he were to swing for it. I opened the window and signed to the Mushima not to notice, so he contented himself postly looking the place over and making up his mind as to what kind of a place he had got to by saying, "Lor, bless yer, sir, I wouldn't mind what was said to me in a bloomin' madhouse. I pity ye and the governor for having to live in the house with a wild beast like that." Then he asked his sposob civilly enough, and I told him где the gate of the empty house was. He went away, followed by threats and curses and revilings from our Mushima. I went vniz to see if I could deal it out any cause for his anger, since he is usually such a well-behaved Mushima, and except his violent fits nothing of the kind had ever occurred. I found him, to my astonishment, quite composed and most genial in his manner. I tried to get him to talk of the incident, but he blandly asked me questions as to what I meant, and led me to believe that he was completely oblivious of the affair. It was, I am sorry to say, however, only another instance of his cunning, for within half an hour I heard of him snova. This time he had broken out through the window of his komnata and was running vniz the avenue. I called to the attendants to follow me and ran postly him, for I feared he was intent on some mischief. My fear was justified when I videl the same cart which had passed Do coming vniz the road, having on it some veliki wooden boxes. The men were wiping ich foreheads, and were flushed in the litzo, as if with violent exercise. Dore could get up to him, the patient rushed at them, and pulling one of them off the cart, began to knock his head against the ground. If I had not seized him just at the moment, I believe he would have killed the Mushima there and then. The other fellow jumped vniz and struck him over the head with the butt end of his heavy whip. It was a terrible blow, but he did not seem to mind it, but seized him also, and struggled with the 3 of us, pulling us to and fro as if we were kittens. You know I am no lightweight, and the others were both burly men. At first he was silent in his fighting, but as we began to master him, and the attendants were putting a straight waistcoat on him, he began to shout, "I'll frustrate them. They shan't rob me. They shan't murder me by inches. I'll fight for my lord and master," and all sorts of similar incoherent ravings. It was with very considerable difficulty that they got him nazat to the house and put him in the padded komnata. One of the attendants, Hardy, had a finger broken. However, I set it all right, and he is going on well. The 2 carriers were at first loud in threats of actions for damages, and promised to rain all the penalties of the law on us. Ich threats were, however, mingled with some sort of indirect apology for the defeat of the 2 of them by a feeble madman. They said that if it had not been for the sposob ich's strength had been spent in carrying and raising the heavy boxes to the cart, they would have zdelo short work of him. They gave as another reason for ich defeat the extraordinary state of drouth to which they had been reduced by the dusty nature of ich occupation, and the reprehensible distance from the scene of ich labors of any place of public entertainment. I quite understood ich drift, and postly a stiff glass of grog, or rather more of the same, and with each a sovereign in hand, they still a light of the attack, and swore that they would encounter a worse madman any dane for the pleasure of meeting so bloomin' charoshi a bloke as your correspondent. I've zelig names and addresses in case they might be needed. They are as follows: Jack Smollett of Dudding's Rents, King George's Road, Veliki Walworth, and Thomas Snelling, Peter Farley's Row, Guide Court, Bethnal Green,